You all here? Since the first time we met here, we've done quite a lot of sailing, and I must admit I've seen some really big improvements across the fleet, which is really good, makes me feel good. And I've heard a bit of feedback that that other people think they've got something out of it. So I guess this is a wrap up on the offshore regatta and the goblets and the sailing we've done. So one thing that impressed me was that this coaching the whole fleet thing is really difficult. And when I was asked to do it, I said it's really hard to do that because you get such a thin spread over the fleet that nobody really gets much out of it. So we changed the rules, and I was allowed to talk to you out on the water and while you were racing and things like that, but that only happened about 2 or 3 races. But the big thing was I got around the boats before the starts and worked with people with their trim. And the first lecture I gave here, I'd been watching the fleet race because I'd been working with Michael Morris out there, and I'd had a good look around. And I had some notes on like 10 boats that had really bad trim and mains on too hard, jibs on too hard, wrong depth, everything. And I reckon the last goblets race, when I whizzed around the fleet, I reckon I've had 2 boats that had their jibs a little bit, could have been a bit better. But generally, the fleet was good. And when I spin around and have a look, like I've only got to just cruise across your stern and glance at you, and I know whether you're looking good or not because I know the twist profiles of the sails. So if I'm not saying anything to you, you're in good shape. So to me, that was a pretty big advancement. And the other thing was that was good. We had a lot of different weather during this coaching period, which gave us a good look at different wind strengths. So that was important. And I think one of the statements I make a lot is if you're a good starter and you're fast, you're going to win a lot of races. And this was borne out in a lot of the races where I'd get the start going and like 2 minutes, and it's not getting a good start, it's surviving for the first 2-3 minutes, in the front stack. If you slip out of the back after 30 seconds, well, it's not a good start. Or you might have got a good start, but you haven't got the speed to hang in there. So then the next thing you tack away, and you take 10 or 12 sterns, and where are you at the top mark? 12th. Because you're instantly 12th. So the good starters that survived after that 2-minute period, and I wrote them all down, inevitably, if there were 6 or 7 of them, 6 of them were in the top 6 at the top mark. So it sort of bears out that is a truth. So not only do you need to be fast, but you need to be fast all the time. So you need to be changing gears properly and reading up-down pressure. And one of the races I remember distinctly because Michael Morris, who's here, he came out of the start looking famous, and I'm going, yes, look at him go. And there were 2 or 3 boats down here going as well, and all of a sudden they hit down pressure, and they didn't change gears properly, and you could just see them start to sag back like this. And when I was talking in the first lecture, I said, who remember that down pressure in the last Saturday's race? There were 3 people that said yes. And they were, the 3 best sailors in the fleet, probably. But they registered the down pressure and changed gears, and they were the ones that the 3 or 4 boats down to leeward that just kept going. And then, because of the drop back here that Michael made, he tacked off and dipped a couple of boats, and the next thing he was out of phase and was, like 7 or 8 at the top mark. So that's how quickly it can degenerate if you're not changing gears properly. And I think all of you can improve big time on that. So we'll talk about that as we go along. So just like you guys race a lot in the harbour where there's no sea. And if you're going to sail offshore for a regatta or sail anywhere where there's sea, or Melbourne or anywhere where it's rough water, you have to sail out there more, because people were just completely, I was going to say, at sea out there, but they really were crossed up. And there were some boats that had done really well in the harbour that did really badly out there. And a couple of them there, you guys, 831, are you 831? Yeah, I've got you all in numbers now. And Roger and his crew, they did really well in the harbour and did really badly out at sea. And I picked the ones that were struggling with their speed and went and had a quick look at them. And the two guys that sailed really well in the harbour had flatter jibs on. Now, you cannot sail offshore with a flat jib, especially when it's light and bumpy, because what happens is, there's your breeze here. What did we say about power and angle of attack? Can anybody remember? Increase angle of attack, decrease angle of attack to get power. Does anybody reckon that's right? Come on, don't be bashful. Who thinks decrease angle of attack for more power? No, that's good. Who reckons increase it? Yeah, well, that's good. So what you're looking at, we did this thing about here's your sail and here's your sail force and the side force and this sort of stuff. Remember that? Driving force. And the drag is the opposite, that gives you constant speed, where an etcher won't sail any faster. Like there is an ultimate speed for every wind strength for an etcher because of the drag, of a displacement hull. So in the harbour, this drag's quite constant because there are no waves. So you can sail with slightly flatter sails and high angles of attack to give you the power, and you get away with it because you can sail the boat high and you crank the target speeds you want up because the drag stays the same. So you end up pointing higher and sailing slightly slower, but your VMG is good because you're pointing. Now, as soon as you go offshore, if you sail the boat in that mode, you get to the stage where you get your speed cranked up, and the next thing you hit a big sea like this, and the boat goes nearly stops, and then you want to accelerate again. So we know how to accelerate. We pull down a little bit, correct? Increase angle of attack. But with flat sails, your sails just stall out. So it forces you to sail back up again onto the jib. So if you're sailing in the harbour, your jib shape is probably like this, and you're sailing in this sort of wind angle, and you're tacking through like 70, 80 degrees, whereas offshore, you're sailing with a head sail. You need a head sail that's like this shape here, so that it'll accept wider angles and allow you to sail deeper, because you're not going to tack through 70, 80 degrees. You're going to tack through 85, 90, especially when it's light, like it was the other day. So to do that, you need much deeper jibs. So the net result is, if you have this sail on, it forces you to sail high. And if you make your mainsail deep, like the jib wants to sail at this angle, but the mainsail wants to sail at this angle, so you put a deep mainsail on behind it, and it's just luffing. And I saw that quite a lot out there, watching people sail upwind, and the front of their mainsails were just luffing. And I'd say, pull it on a little bit, but trimming it on wasn't the answer either, because what you needed was a jib that was deep enough to let you go down so you could use the mainsail depth. And I've been around doing this for quite a while, as you know. And I remember, like about 15 years ago, I was out offshore with some solings, with Matt Hayes and Ian Brown and a couple of, another Olympic sailor. I can't think who it was now, but one of the boats just couldn't get any height and speed. And I was looking at it and I was saying, deepen your main a bit and all this, and just nothing was working. So I said, give us a sail of this thing for a minute, because I used to sail solings a lot. And I got on it and I started to steer. And every time I went to go down to get pace on, the jib stalled out. The telltale stalled out. And I said, the jib's too flat. Well, in those boats, you could shift the cars forward and get the forestay sagging. So we increased the forestay sag. The last thing you'd think of to make a boat point is to make the jib deeper. So we got it deeper and got the boat feeling good. And next thing, speed came up. And the height was, all of a sudden, we just crawled up from underneath boats like this. Killed it. So it's the speed through the water that gets the keel working and gives you lift. And if you've got good speed, like you're always, let's have a bit of height, let's have a bit of height. If you're struggling for speed, you're always going down looking for power. Let's go down looking for power. So then eventually, that's where your height goes. It's everything you're doing is down. When your speed's good, everything you're doing is up. So the balance of the boat is also critical, that in offshore sailing or any Etchell sailing, if you're holding the tiller extension in your hands lightly, you should be feeling positive pressure. Now, if you reduce the tiller load, the boat should automatically climb. If you have to push it up all the time, the boat will never go to windward. It'll never point. And it's quite offshore. I was watching some of the tiller movements of the boat, and a lot of them were a lot to leeward. So the boat needed to be encouraged to go up. So you either need more rake, or you need a deeper main, or your leach of your main needs to be a little tighter or whatever, but you need to change the balance. And one of the days in the harbour, one of the windier days, I was looking at one of the boats and I said, how's it feel? And I've got a lot of helm. And they actually had their jib trim too wide. It was a bit easy when I looked at it. I thought it looked a bit wide, but okay, that's not bad. But when they told me there was no balance, they had helm, I said, okay, just try a little bit backstay on, just drop the depth of your main refraction and trim your jib on. Like higher angles of attack on your jib, because it wasn't anywhere near the stall point, with the telltales up the top. And immediately the boat went, I like this, and just started rolling along. How does that feel? Fantastic. Who was that? Does anybody remember? Yeah, it was too. So you can change the balance if you think how your trim is. And offshore, I struck a few. Don't even have to rub this out. This is better than ever. Offshore, I found guys in the mainsail trib, and the jib really wide at the top here. And the thinking was, we're offshore on bumpy water, we've got to carry a lot more twist. You don't have to carry a lot more twist. You need to get the power. And one of the jibs was luffing, all the way down here. It was like blowing back. So you've got to go, like, let's use the oldest trim method in the world, pull the sail on until it fills, and then perhaps ease it a little bit. And the mainsail's the same. A lot of guys were sailing offshore, and they were going upwind like this, and the top of the mainsail was luffing, like 20% of the time. And I was allowed to talk to you out there, so I could whiz around and say, get your mainsail on a little bit. So don't disregard the things that have worked for half a century or longer, The square riggers probably used it. I was giving a talk down at Port Lincoln once, and on the back wall of the yacht club, there was a massive photograph of a square rigger. And I was talking about telltales, and the guy said, "There's nothing new about these. Look, that square rigger's got them on." Reef points. Yeah, so this twist thing, the twist, like if the bottom of your jib's like this and it's going up and it's getting wider and wider like that, what's happening to the angle of attack? Less and less and less. So less angle of attack, less power. So we put these telltales on the top of the jib up here in the middle, because separation generally happens at the highest point of the curve, which is where the biggest minus plus pressure is. So when you trim on, if you increase angle of attack until it stalls, it'll start from here. So those telltales I put on there, a lot of you put them on, and that reads it much better than the leech ribbon does, much more accurately. So you can trim this jib on until you get near this stall point. Okay, so if you're sailing in the harbour and you can sail the boat really accurately because there's no swirl swooshing the boat around like this, then you can trim it right up accurately so that all the leeward tells break at the same time, because you can sail it accurately, angle of attack. And when you get out in the ocean, you've got to give it a little bit more tolerance, but you've only got to probably ease the sheet like 3 or 4 millimetres. Like when I started working with you guys, I ease the sheet a little bit. Whoa, that's too much. How much did you let go? Oh, this much? Try half. Yeah, and people got much better at going, when I said ease a little bit, they knew how much to ease it to make a little difference. Because I'm looking from out of the boat and I see the leech go whoosh out here and it's gone from too close to too open. So people got a pretty good handle on that. And the same with the main sheet trim. The amount that changes the sail dramatically, changes all this stuff quite dramatically, is quite small. So offshore, you only need a tiny ease to make the top of the jib just a little bit more tolerant, because you're wobbling around more. So that's pretty much what I saw offshore. And if you haven't got a jib deep enough to sail the bigger angles that you have to sail in rough water and light air at sea, then you will be slow. And I've been there. I rang Coco today and said, what's your recommendation for an offshore jib? And he said, well, it's LML. And I said, has that got double hanks on it? And he said, no, but the luff hollow on it is the same as the long hanks. Do you understand what I mean there? Yep. Because, when they first had etchels with and we first did it on Solings, but you're only allowed 2 jibs, and we used to have a light with long hanks on it so that you could go offshore with it. And it'd work light air in the harbour, and then the other medium sail would be a lot of the heavy air sails and the light air sails. They only differ with the luff hollow. The mould shape is probably fairly much the same. Is that correct, Coco?
Yeah, I think what we found with the light air jibs is that we as sailors have learned to control the rig a lot more than we had to 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I heard tonight people talking about their brogues, and we've got adjustable heels, wheels and brakes.
Yeah.
So I think actually what's happened is, instead of the sailmaker having to give so much range to the sail, the sailors have actually learned how to set up the sails through the range. So
Some have.
More sails better
Yeah, but you can't change a sail that's the wrong mould shape.
No.
And this is what I was just going to say. Like this, I don't know whether I had this last time I was here. Eh?
You did.
I did, yeah. Well, that's mould shape. Yeah, that's what the sailmaker's designed in there. And then if this is a jib, like this has got round on it because it's supposed to be a mainsail, but if it was a jib, there'd be hollow cut in here to fit the forestay sag. And what they're doing is they sort of know, well, this is an etchel and, you know, it's got a certain amount of luff curve, you know, in the mainsail, so they can pull the backstay this hard, so they can figure out pretty much what the luff hollow is. So, you know, when you're sailing in strong winds, you're obviously going to get a lot more luff hollow than forestay sag than you are when it's moderate. So the sail's cut that way, but the mould shape quite often is not that different. When I was working in, you know, with the Stars over in Perth, you know, their jibs, their light and heavy jibs were pretty much exactly the same mould shape, just different hollows. So yeah, that's something that just, you know, learning to handle the rig. The trouble is, if you put backstay on to stabilise the forestay a little bit, then you can, if your mast and luff curve of your main's not quite right, if it's a little bit flat up there, and you put a tiny bit of backstay on, well, all of a sudden it's too flat. But if it's a stiffer mast, then you can use a little bit of backstay. So it's quite subtle what you can do. And some of the light air forestays, when they were just flopping around like this, yeah, and they were just saying they need just a tiny bit of backstay just to steady the forestay a little bit.
Fletcher, again, I think we've gone away from the sagging the forestays to generate a huge amount of shape in the sails. I think, again, as we've learned how to control the rigs better, you can actually, coming back to your mould shape, you can actually build a more similar mould shape in your light and your heavy headsail, and your light headsail doesn't now need that huge
Yeah,
sag.
exactly.
They get more range.
Yeah.
Another very powerful thing, I wasn't out offshore there, but how many of you actually took the top batten out of your jib? Yeah, that's a huge factor in that stuff.
Yeah. The two jibs that I specifically were looking at was Roger's and yours, because they really didn't have enough mould shape in them. It didn't matter what you did with them, you couldn't get any depth in them.
Yeah, well, we can
Now that was
now with a full-length batten, and then you can pop the full-length batten.
Yeah.
A permanent short batten in there.
Yeah.
And that makes a huge difference to
Yeah,
the shape.
Yeah, I'll
You're talking about
go along with that, yeah.
twist and your power and that at the top. It
So
makes
why
a
is that
big
better offshore? What's the difference?
It just, the batten in light air overrides the mould shape of the sail. the rig you're putting in it, if it was not enough pressure in the sail, well, I believe it was light you were talking about.
Yeah.
I wasn't out there, it was very light.
6-8 knots.
When I was looking, we finished another test tube today. We went down to Melbourne today, and I don't know if you saw, I was out using a test tube last week, and with radials in it, and we built another one today, next generation from that. And you hold it up, you put the batten in it, and it looks as flat as this,
Yeah.
as a table. We pull the batten out, and the thing is 18% deep. So with the batten in and out, until you triple the batten, it measures about 6% deep in the batten. Measures 18% batten deep when you take the batten out, because there's not enough wind to cripple the batten.
Yeah.
That's why we make the removable battens now, to give you way more range through your sails. So so basically by whipping the long one out, we have a second permanent one in there that you wouldn't even realise it's only about this long. So you don't have to stuff around with it too. It makes a huge difference. And you should be playing around with this on the harbour wherever you are. The top batten.
Yeah, the Tornado cats that I've been working with for the last 10 years or so, they're full-length battens in the jibs, and the top batten in that, you couldn't get a batten that was thin enough you know, you got one of those really thin battens, and I used to grind them down so that they were like this, because you had to get rid of the width, and this part of the front part of the batten had to be just paper thin so that it just flowed in with the sail. And if you put a stiff one in there, the top of the sail just go flat. And then when you looked at the twist profile of the jib, it used to do this. Now, wherever there's a stiff batten, it makes a hard corner on the twist profile. And you know, I would think that most actual sailors should have a stiff and a soft batten for the top of their mainsails. Correct, Coco?
We supply them. I don't like the soft one. I only personally use the stiff batten.
Yeah.
So I find the mainsails end up with the soft batten way too deep in the head. When the mast, because we have aluminium masts, which have a lot of, a lot of luff curve in them.
Yeah, Coco and I've talked about this quite a bit, and the difference between having, you know, the correct depth up here and being a bit flat is, you know, it's quite to do with whether the top of the mast, if it's got a little bit of permanent bend in it, that's disastrous. Or if it's a bit soft up there, it's disastrous, because as soon as you touch the backstay, you know, this goes flat, and then you end up with this sort of corner on the twist profile like that, where the top batten, you know, wants to hang open. So, now, and I said to Coco, like, what's the answer to that? And he says, you know, like, you've got to customise the luff curve to fit the mast.
Basically, I'll go out with a standard luff curve,
Yeah.
look at it on the boat, and then necessarily bump it. And
Yeah.
generally, if it's a new mast, it's fine. If it's a mast older than 3 years old, they are normally, it's unusual to look up on and find they haven't got a permanent kick back in the head.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you just got to bump. It's a localised bump you do in that spot. And
Yeah, when you think of how many times you've gone downwind in 25 knots and you haven't let the backstay off around the top mark.
It used to be a lot worse when we did the reaching lead. The reaching lead used to really bugger the mast.
Yeah.
But now, yeah, you're exactly right. You never go around the top mark without at least letting you fine tune off your rig.
Yeah. Because that does really stress them a bit.
And the downside of what Mike's talking about there is normally when people say to me I'm struggling with height, first thing I look at is their mast. Put my up their mast. I guarantee the people who are struggling with height, I say, you go all right in the light air? They say, oh, we go pretty well in the light air. But Jesus, as the breeze comes in, we go slow.
Yeah.
The reason you're going well in the light air is that pre-bend fast because it flattens your head makes loud. So that luff curve
Keeps the top of the leach open.
Yeah, and that's when the breeze comes in, when you go to pull your backstay on, it's already pre-bent, the given amount of load to flatten it out to the right shape doesn't require as much. So your forestay, you don't have control over. The forestay just sags to leeward, so your headstall's too deep, and then your mainsail leach is too soft. So that's why you don't go. So the answer is to take your rig out and try and bounce it straight. And I do that every time I take my rig out, I bounce my rig. And it's not easy. You need 3 or 4 big blades.
Have you ever busted one?
Not busted, but with due respect, you've got to have big balls to do it.
Yeah.
You'll be amazed how much load it takes to actually have an effect on it.
Yeah.
And I bounce them straight sideways, and I bounce them straight 4.5. And
So the slight sideways bend in your mast is disastrous, because it does the same thing. If you mast like this, and you sheet your mainsail on, it's already out here twisted, you know, before you start. Like if the mast was up here, twist profile starts from here. So the leach actually stands up a heap more. And I'm just doing that in an exaggerated fashion so you can see it. But if you look up a mast and it's like 2 millimetres hanging to leeward, that makes a really big difference to how the leach sets up and whether the boat wants to go to windward or not.
I think a good rule, because people always ask me this, to visualise it. If you look at the gap in your track, which is about 5 mil, if you see a variance of as much, because then you put your eye on it, if you see the variance as much as your track, you've got a problem. Okay? And same with 4.5. If you're looking up at it and it looks like
Is this when you're on the hard?
Just sitting on the hard, let the mast
Yeah.
relax. Just
Yeah.
let the mast, sorry, this is
Yeah.
And if it's going back half more than the track width, you have a height issue with your guide range. And the way to address it is one of two things. You've either got to bounce your mast straight, but it will go back. They don't have memory because they're not re-tempered after they're welded. And the other thing is you do a localised bump in your luff curve to compensate for that point, which is very simple. It's just every actual mast at a certain age needs a 6 bump in the luff curve.
So, has anybody got any questions about that? That offshore thing?
For any given jib,
Huh?
for any given jib,
Yeah.
what rig adjustments will improve the depth?
If the mould shape is not deep enough, basically nothing. Like you haven't got much backstay on. That's so your forestay's as slack as it can be. Like you can put chocks in behind the mast and all sorts of stuff to try and get it looser. But like if you haven't got any backstay on, and like your forestay's going to be really loose. But it's just like I just look and I know. Like, I just see that sail is too flat in the mould shape and there's nothing much you can do about it. And we tried on a couple of occasions and then Roger, where's he? Yeah, you changed your jib to a heavy jib.
Well, it wasn't heavy, it was a little bit deeper.
Yeah, but it was...
A bit more breeze in the third race too, so
Yeah, it was deeper. But the boat started to move straight away. Like you'd see it. It's just like I can tell when a boats are going. They look happy when they're going. They just roll through the water. If they're not going, they bang up and down and bitch around. And like boats have got to be happy. You can't make them do things they don't want to do. Like if the boat's going to go to windward, you just steer it normally and it'll go to windward if it's set up properly. And if it's got the mast hanging out a bit on one side and not the other, then you're going to have a height problem. And there's nothing you can do to fix it other than to fix the problem. And as soon as Roger put his other jib on, like he went better straight away. And you had some starting problems, and you got a couple of shockers in the harbour and you just instead of being up in the first 2 or 3, you're down in the back 2 or 3. Because it's really hard to sail down there. Isn't it? I used to get down there sometimes and I'd think, this is horrible. I don't know how people can sail in the middle of the fleet all the time without getting lost. So the other thing that was obvious offshore was downwind. In that sort of stuff, you can't use a runner. Who was using a runner out there? You were.
I've only got one spinnaker.
Yeah. And Michael was. Who else did I think? Well, I think Matt might have been. Yeah, you guys were. And because we talked about this before, because the spinnaker has a half width on it, and the runners are wide, big shoulders, and they're flat. They're like this. So they're wide and flat because when you're running, you're just creating drag and you're going downwind. And when it gets light, then you have to start sailing angles and you get your pole forward and you're getting flow across the sail. Where does power come from? Depth. Did somebody say depth? Yeah, depth. So if you've got a big flat sail like this, it's not very deep, but offshore, it's really hard to keep these things set because the boat starts to do this and like this, and the next thing it's just collapsing. And then you get the pole forward a bit and you sheet it on a little bit and then it's oversheeted and there's nothing much you can do about it. So the VMG spinnaker is smaller in its projected area, but instead of having the shape like this, it's a deeper, rounder shape. They're using the cross width for depth in the spinnaker, so it's easier to trim, it stays up there. And when you start sailing angles, you can get flow on it, and it's quite powerful. Is that correct, Cocker? Yeah. So, and it's been the same for like 30 years. So like when we used to go and race Sollings off there, we had, Dynac, which was really hard, spinnaker cloth, big runners like this, and you just couldn't keep them full at all. And Cocker mentioned today they're experimenting with slightly softer cloths for offshore, and that's part of the other problem. The harder finished cloths that have got no give in them, they just, when they get a wave attacks them, they just shake themselves empty. There's no tolerance in them at all. So if you're going to sail offshore, you need, the spinnaker thing. The other thing that became obvious as I kept watching these boats is that the top guys are running with a lot more rake forward. They're getting the chocks completely out of the front of the mast, getting the backstay off and actually laying them over the bow. And you want to work at that, because don't ask me why, but keelboats, if you hang the mast over the bow, they're quicker. Dragons have been like that for years, and Etchells are like it, Stars are like it. Stars go down because they've got shrouds in line with the mast and they've got a sliding foot. They go downwind with the mast like this. And if you're not there, you're not going quick. And so they're things you need to work at.
Mike, what do you think about bang going downwind, square downwind? Do you like bang on with the top of the sail hooked and stalled, or?
No, not hooked and stalled. Like the vang is controlling the twist of the sail, just like your sheet pressure is when you're going upwind. So having the correct twist is just as important when you're running as it is when you're reaching. When you're going upwind. So out there, you needed the leech to be moving a bit to make up for the sea that's making the sail pant, because if it's panting forward and backwards like this, the apparent wind's changing a lot. So it's better to let the leech move a little bit. But as the wind comes up, if you leave it like that, then when you get a gust, it's not pushing the boat forward. Like, so you've got to increase your leech tension and your vang loads so that the sail is taking, when a gust hits it, it's pushing the boat forward. And the thing you've got to remember is that if you're running, and you've got a big runner on, and you're running in stronger winds and running quite deep, most of the time you're just setting up a heap of drag like this, and your mainsail's out here, and it's dragged too. So all you need is to have it strapped on when it's windy. So when you start running angles, if you're running down here and it's light and you're starting to run out here, well then you're trying to get flow on the sails. So then your leech ribbon should be working. And, the flow on the spinnaker needs depth, and you're now creating high and low pressures on your mainsail again, so that you're getting lift power off the sail. And that's the reason you come up and start sailing and jibing and sailing angles like this, because you're getting flow on the sails, and you're increasing this. Like when you're reaching and your mainsail's like this, the main force arrow of the sail is pretty much square to the chord. So here's your main force of your sail, and here's the side force. And here's drive. So as you start getting the boom out into a reaching situation like this, the heeling moment goes down and the drive goes up. So you can carry like when it's windy or when it's moderate, you can carry deep, your mainsail as deep as you can get it, and vanged on to minimum amount of twist, so it's right near the store point, because that's where the power is. But if it's really windy, then you just keep your mainsail flatter and twist it and do all the things to depower it. Otherwise you end up laying on your side and broaching if you're sailing a reaching leg. But on wind and return you wouldn't be sailing like that, you'd be just running straight down. And you're in the fully stalled mode, and all you're doing is creating drag, because that's all that's pushing you downwind. And you run the shortest distance is still a straight line between 2 points. So when it's windy, you can run as flat as you're game to without getting the death rolls up and jibing and doing an all-standing broach or something like that. And again, the guys that are good at it can run flatter than the guys that are not so good at it. So that's about how it is. And out there on on offshore on the weekend, the first run, Michael, you tried to run too flat and just lost truckloads. And Matt, who's quite experienced out there, he ran, on a good angle that gave him spinnaker stability, and then came back and came out a long way in front. And the steering out there is quite difficult too, because on the Saturday we had the breeze was this is the coast, and the breeze was sort of east, trying to get a little bit to the north, but the swell was coming in from here. So on the port tack, you were almost straight into the swell, and on starboard, you had the swell right on your beam. But everybody sort of realised that was what was happening. Yeah. So this one is, the starboard tack is quite an art sailing out there, and I've done it, like thousands of miles out there in all sorts of boats. And the boat sort of moves sideways like this, which puts the apparent wind completely to leeward, and your headsail goes aback. And the tendency is to follow it down, and then all of a sudden the sideways movement stops and you start like almost come back a bit, and the apparent wind goes like this. So the boat powers up and leans over. Who was feeling that? Lots. So it's like sailing in rough water, you have to develop some wave recognition and some feeling for what's happening to the boat. And somebody who's experienced out there will know the minute that the swell starts to move the boat, he just fades the boat down, but not too far, enough to follow the first bit of the sideways movement, and then he gets down here, and then it's at the bottom of the trough, the headsails are back a little bit, and then as the boat starts to go up, he lets it lift again. But the headsail only luffs a little bit. Now I saw guys out there on the weekend, the headsail was like almost on the other tack, because the boat had gone so far sideways and they hadn't made any change in direction at all, it just went aback completely. And I watched Dougie sailing in the last two races. Dougie McCain, who's pretty experienced in rough water because he does a lot of ocean racing. His headsail hardly emptied at all. And he was, he won the last two races quite easily. So it sort of says something about the skill of steering in waves, and whenever you're steering in rough water, you've got to get some wave recognition going. Like when you're sitting here steering and you're looking out here, you've got to go, like, there's only a certain number of waves you're going to see in the day. Like when the wind's like 12 or 15 knots, if you drive upwind in the powerboat like I do all the time, I see the waves in fast forward. But I know I see the same thing when I'm sailing, because I go, oh, this is all right, this is all right. Oh, here comes a couple of bad waves. And you've got to go, how am I going to handle these waves? And you've got to experiment a little bit, because you're going to see those bad waves again in another 30 seconds. And you get bits of water that are quite flat. You might get a bit from here to the crane almost. That's quite a nice flat, and you can trim the boat into sort of almost flat water trim. But then you see, here comes a couple of bad waves, and if I don't put it back in rough water trim, which is slightly softer trim and a little deeper, and get through that, then I'm going to hit those and stop. So you need to get some wave recognition going and just experiment with how you handle them. Now, you read books about how you steer up the wave and you do this, and there's all sorts of descriptions on how you should sail rough water. But the whole aim of the exercise, the rig has to go straight through the air. Right? The waves are trying to make the boat do this. The rig doesn't want to do that because the wind's not doing that. The rig wants to go straight through the air, controlled angle of attack. Okay, so your whole aim is to guess what the wave's going to do to your boat and make the counter movement of your boat before it happens. So if you're going to go hit a wave and it's going to hit the bow and push it down like this, just as you're sailing into that wave, you've got to take the pressure off the helm, and if your boat's set up nicely, it'll climb. And it'll just go up over the wave and come back like this, and the rig has not changed direction more than about like 3 degrees. But if you let the wave hit the boat without doing anything, like we just talked about, the bow gets banged away like this, and the rig goes, whoop, the boat heels over, and then when you give it a shove up to get it back up again, it goes whoop, and you go, I watch people steering and I say, you just got the zigzags up. They go like this. And it takes them a while before they get a bit of flat water before it starts going straight again. So, and the better helmsmen are better at that. I remember when I was running the Hobart race, I was laying the courses and stuff, and there was an ocean race out there. This is a long time ago. But I just remember watching the top 3 or 4 boats come round, came on the wind, and the guy steering them, one was Rodney Patterson, one was Dave Forbes, and one was Wilmot. And they're standing 40-footers with like 10 knots of wind and big slop on. The helms were not moving more than this, because they had and the angle of heel was just perfect, and the directions of the boats were not like this, they were almost dead true. And I watched this for a while, and as the standard of the sailors went down, there was this, and then there was this, people trying to steer the sea, same wind conditions, and the boats like doing this. So it is a feel thing that you've got to try and learn. So, okay, have we got any questions? So, all that, the regattas in the harbour, the goblets, we had a lot of different conditions. And something that we do, I started doing it with the youth and the high performance radial sailors and stuff, is going, like when you go out there every day, you look out there and you go, oh, we'll go out there, and you start setting the boat up. You should start setting the boat up before you leave the dock, in your head. Because when you get out there, you should be able to just pull all the settings to the right spot and come on the wind and be right in the ballpark. Just a few small adjustments to get the fine bits done. So you've got to aim for that. And when you're going to go racing, you've got to look at the weather pattern and say, what sort of a day is this? Now, most of the days we raced were very shifty, so the shifts were really important. One day wasn't, and I'll talk about that in a second. So they were shifty and a lot of pressure-orientated days where the pressure was coming through in streaks and the shifts were sometimes quite localised. Like you'd get a shift on one side of the course and the guys on the other side wouldn't get it. So they became detached from one another. So you've got to go, this is the sort of day it is. Now, and those days were, one of them was a start line. The breeze was out of the southeast coming, and we were racing up into Double Bay, and the breeze had been trying to shift to the north a little bit, and that's what it's going to do. Like if it's been south, the breeze in Sydney, the second day when it settles down, it's trying to get to the east. So it had a couple of little goes, and it made the line really, really biased like this. But it happened during the 5 minutes at the start. So, but this had happened 3 or 4 times when we were setting up. We'd got these big left-hand shifts. So you've got to be going, okay, this is trying to happen. It's shifty, but it is trying to get to the left. So eventually, just as the start went, this happened, and there was pressure. Bradley's is here somewhere, and they were pointing a bit higher because they got out to about here. So, but it went left, and there wasn't any pressure up here. You remember that, Michael? No pressure at all up here, and these guys had 3 guys hanging over the side. And they sailed over here, hit a shift and came out like this. So that was, and the guys who were off this end of the line eventually got going. They didn't get this shift. So Roger tacked off because he saw this and was really bad to see. Roger tacked off, and he was, which is the thing to do in my opinion, because if you keep going, you hit the header and you sail through. By the time you get out here into clear air, they're gone. The guy who said take your medicine early was an imbecile, because all you're doing is going, I'm going to be last now. So just keep going. So Roger tacked away, and he got a little header here. And they didn't get it, they were still up. If he'd tacked then immediately, he would have crossed them. But they were trying to make their mind up whether to tack on it or not. And by the time they did, it lifted back again, and then he was stuck down on this side of the course. But because it was shifty, they stayed there, and eventually they got some headers as they got up near Clark Island, and they got back in the top, 8 or 9 boats or something. Whereas some of the guys that did this sort of thing were last instantly. Now, GT, who sailed pretty well through that regatta, does everybody agree with that? He placed his boat in the fleet very, very well. And a few times, if you were one of the persons that say don't get near the edges,